Hello everyone, we're the girls who eat, breathe and dream motorsport. I'm Danique and I'm joined today by my co-host Jamie and by our lovely guest F1Toni.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And
Yes,
I'm very happy that Jamie is back again for
yes,
this
I'm
week.
happy. I'm happy to be back for just a week, and then
I feel very honored.
So, first of all, let's walk through what happened the past week in motorsport. So, Max Verstappen got his 17th win of the season in Sao Paulo, a race where we saw Leclerc not even take the start due to a hydraulics failure. Perez and Alonso fighting for P3 till the finish line. Magnussen and Albon making contact in the first corner, which caused a red flag, and it also caused damage for Piastri and Ricciardo, who ended up finishing the race 2 laps down and a lap down, respectively, due to pitting before the safety car came in and the red flag was called. And we also had retirements for Joe Bottas and George Russell. And besides that, we had the last race in in World Endurance Championship, where the Iron Dames got their maiden win in the LMGTE AM class, which was also the last ever win in that category, since the categories are changing up for the upcoming year. The Toyota trio of Brendan Hartley, Sebastian Buemi, and Ryo Hirakawa claimed the 2023 World Endurance Championship title in a dominating manner. And the WRT with the number 41 car became the last ever LMP2 champions, with a 1-2 finish to finish off the season, with the 31 car coming in second after a very difficult season. And Corvette, with Keating, Katzberg, and Veron, became champions in the LMGTE AM class.
I cried for the Iron Dames. I was watching like the last 15 minutes. I was like, oh my god, they're gonna win. They worked so hard for this. I was like, oh my god. And then I just was bawling my eyes out.
I wasn't able to watch it because I had a concert of my orchestra when it was happening. So like I did like occasionally check the timings, and I saw constantly the 31 car of WRT being like P1 in their class, and I was like, yes, go Robin. Finally doing well with their team after a very difficult year. But yeah, I'm just happy with how the race ended.
It's a great reminder also just like how much is happening in motorsports across the board,
Yes.
and just how much there is to follow. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why we always try to do like the motorsport summaries at the beginning
I
of
like
each
it.
episode. So, first of all, something we always start off with is asking our guests who they are and what their role is within motorsport. So,
It's a great question. I'm mostly known as F1Toni, but you can call me just Toni. It's very weird having the F1 in front of my name. I am a tech and F1 commentator, and I just love telling stories about Formula One. And I think I joke about this, but I think I'm actually very serious that I use basically F1 as my entry point to talk about anything that I find fascinating, whether it's business, the future of fan engagement, as I said, the business of Formula One, the technology of Formula One, the history. And I just think this is such a layered, complex sport with a lot of deep history that there are so many stories to tell, and so many stories that can help personally and others, I think, understand all different aspects of today's world and society. So yeah, I just use F1 as my excuse to talk tech, politics, culture, and anything in between. So I think that's the best intro I have. It can be much longer in the, over the years, I just started working a lot and embedding myself with the teams for a variety of different reasons. I think this team saw me as an opportunity to help them connect with other audiences. I work with promoters and I work with sponsors as well. I do a lot of consulting on the side as well, with talking with the likes of Sky Sports and YouTube and the series, and just understanding something that I find fascinating, is just understanding the future engagement of fans, and specifically how to connect with fans like the three of us, whether that's Gen Z, young women, or just women, full stop, because we may want to engage with the sport in a different way.
Yes, I think that you see that a lot. Like, I'm sometimes just scrolling on Twitter, and I know F1 Twitter is like chaos most of the time, definitely after a race, but you see like more women, different things reacting on different things than like men do. So that's always very interesting to see, because we the women on Twitter, for example, say different stuff. I'm like, yeah, they're right.
Yeah, they see things differently. I think we perceive different things. I always find it fascinating when this is, I think, with there's two things that have happened, I think, in the recent years. The barrier to entry has lowered, which means we can all see something and then communicate it with the rest of the world, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Instagram, TikTok, you name it, Discord channels, etc. But also, I think the way the sport is being showcased to us, we're picking up on different things. I think the broadcasters have now understood that we don't just want to see the cars on track. We want to see what's happening in the garage, and we want to see the drivers and the driver reactions to certain things. So I think there's like a cyclical curve where the fans are picking up on things and the broadcasters are learning from what the fans are engaging with and want. And I think there's been something very interesting with the increase of more diverse fans. We're getting, to your point, Jamie, more diverse content coming up and more diverse conversations coming up, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, especially also in the recent years, like from the fan perspective, it's been like, oh, I've grown up interested in health, so I'm gonna try to look at the health aspects of the sport. Someone else will look at the engineering aspects of the sport, and we together we can like see where it combines, and like how health can be an effect on the engineering of a car, but also vice versa and stuff like that. And I feel like, especially in the recent years, with the barrier becoming lower, it has been easier to talk about that with fellow fans, but also with the people who are responsible for those tasks within motorsport just in general.
Yeah. The number one thing that I keep hearing is how surprised, maybe less today, but maybe 3 years ago, how surprised like the engineers and the mechanics were, just like, wait, you want to talk with me? You want to know about what I do? And yeah, absolutely. Like, it's not just about the drivers. And I think, again, Drive to Survive helped with that. But I also think that lowering of barriers to entry, where more fans have more questions and look at things exactly what you're saying, Danica, of just like through different lenses, realizing, hey, I actually want to hear straight from the source. So I want to hear about the health expert on the team, or the mental health expert on the team, or the logistical human who's looking after the setup and the breakdown after a race weekend, which I think is just, it's what part of the beauties of this sport is. There's endless questions and endless answers.
And especially with the development.
Yes. Like, it's never ending.
No, but also I've seen like in the last month, Blake tweeted from like triple adults should be banned or something similar, and then Callum tweeted that last week, I believe. I mean, he's right. Like, people don't forget those people work like 5 days a week. It's not like they just started on Friday and then go home on Sunday. No, that's not how it works. Because I was in Monaco when they were setting up everything, and they were already there from Tuesday on and putting everything together. So in my head, I was like, how do people think the car will be on track? Like, it's not coming out of the fucking truck just in a whole piece.
But
that was so funny. I was like,
it's human nature to not think about the complexity of things. When you think of just like, you go to anyone's wedding, or you go to a beautifully organized event, a wedding, it's like you go to someone's wedding, or you go to a beautiful event, or you go to a party, no one thinks about the hours and hours of logistics and catering and the amount of money, and you only see the mistakes. We only start to realize all of these components when you're just like, oh, the caterer forgot to serve the white wine, or, you know, the music's not plugged in, the sound sounds terrible, or whatever it is. We never appreciate a well orchestrated event until we start seeing the mistakes, and then we realize. And I think Formula One is a very beautifully complex orchestrated event from start to finish, and so we are oblivious to all the different details about it.
Yeah, well, I was very I don't know, surprised that people were saying, yeah, I have a full-time job. I was like, but they have a full-time job. It's not that they just come showing up on Friday. That's not how this works. But
and also think about it. We're going to race in Vegas next week. After Vegas, we've got Abu Dhabi. That's more or less, I think it's like a 24, 25-hour flight with an 11-hour time difference. And we're expecting them to just hit the ground running, whether you're building, whether you're building the garage, whether you're building the car, whether you're prepping to race. Like, it's absolute insane. I can't do anything after 25-hour race, 25-hour plane ride, let alone sit in a car or build a garage for the car to be in. I think that layer, I don't think people quite understand the layer of complexity on top of the travel logistics and the time zone differences and the jet lag and dealing with the weather and the changing of the weather is like mental.
Yeah, like what I have been saying like for the past couple of years, back when I got into Formula One, it was like 2016, 2017. There was like maybe 20 races at most on a calendar, and I was like, that's the perfect amount because then you can split it quite nicely, but you can also like have the time in between to have some rest for the teams and the drivers and everyone working in Formula One, while also keeping the excitement because, oh, there is not a race almost every weekend. So the excitement builds up because you're looking forward to finally watch a race again. And nowadays, I have been missing like some of the races just because I've been busy with other things and I've been like, yeah, the same will happen next week, or like there's another race next week.
And we're fans. Isn't that crazy? We're exhausted, quote unquote. And I say quote unquote, just being fans, because fans are, for me, pivotal and so important to the sport. And without the fans, you don't actually have a sport. But if we're exhausted as fans, how do you wrap your head around, and how do we expect the teams and the drivers to just keep going? I've been a firm believer. I don't know what your numbers are, but my number is 18 is the sweet spot. I don't need any more races a year than 18. 18 is like my go-to number.
It's why I love Formula E so much. It's like most of the times it's 16 races at most.
Perfect.
And like sometimes you've got a whole month between races, and I'm like, it's perfect because the anticipation for the next race grows, but the championship is also relatively close because the last couple of years there's always been like at least 3 or 4 drivers who were fighting for the title. And like the teams are so close and competitive as well. Like it's insane, and it's more exciting to have less races, to me at least.
It's more exciting. I find that every race then becomes more valuable towards the championship. That's also why I think that the more races we add, the more it dilutes the championship. And look, we're seeing it this year with Max Verstappen. Like, these following races now are completely diluted. He doesn't actually need them, And I generally don't believe that the reason why the season is quote unquote boring, that some people will say because Max has already run. I was like, he's already run because there are so many races for him to win, and he is so bloody good right now. The problem that they have is, as human beings, we're very fickle and we do very well with habits. And so if we're not in the habit of doing the same thing every weekend or every 2 weeks and consuming that content, then we can easily like dip out of the sport. And I do believe that that is one of the things that Formula E is struggling with, is Formula E isn't in people's habits just yet because there are so few races. And so they dip in and out of the sport. So seems to me that there isn't a perfect model, but I'm the same with you. I'm exhausted being just a fan of Formula One these days.
Yeah, it's just so many races is not fun anymore. Like, I have the team in my mind in the background. They have been complaining about how little they get to see their family. It has been a reason why some people have quit the past couple of years, because of how tough it is to go to another country like every other week, sometimes even every week, and it's just not fun anymore for both fans and teams and drivers. Except for Max Verstappen, he lives, breathes, and dreams racing, because even on weeks off, he's back in the sim at home.
Yep. But even
Like,
he's come out and said, I don't think we need this many races. Like, he's been one of
yeah,
it's interesting to your point. I think he enjoys it. Does he enjoy going racing every weekend in the format of travel, get there, all of that? But he's been one of the people who says, I love this. I could do this every day, but also I don't think we need that many races.
yeah. Like,
So
I feel
interesting.
like if they give more opportunity to do things in between, different different races and stuff. Like back in the day, you had F1 drivers joining in the Indy 500, joining in Le Mans, things like that. It's not possible anymore nowadays because of the amount of races that there are currently in the Formula One calendar, and they usually clash with those events. Same with Race of Champions, although that a little bit less, but yeah.
Do you think that the fact that there are so many races now in Formula One, this truly does take away from F1 drivers being able to have interest in any other series and motorsports? Because it's
I
all
mean,
time consuming?
not necessarily of taking away the interest, but taking
The
away the
possibility.
possibility of participation more
But if
so.
you don't
Like,
participate, maybe you lose interest in it. But it's, yeah,
yeah, but
I've never
it's
thought about
like
it in that way.
it's a way that I've been trying, like I always think about the fact that there are more races out there. So like there's more opportunities for different things. So yeah. Yeah, that's what we dislike currently a little bit about motorsport. But what, from a fan perspective, do you love most about motorsport?
Um, Honestly, part of it was what we were talking about at the start of this conversation of just the diversity of entry points into the sport. The fact that, you know, some people have pulled on the publicly available data and created a way of watching the race. I'm talking about Multiviewer, who, I don't know if you've come across what this person has done, but they basically pulled out all of the data and it allows you to stream multiple streams at the same time. So you can have a couple of the onboard cameras, you can have the full lap, you can watch the broadcasting feed, and you can do it all at the same time. And I think it's really pretty cool of just like how creative the fan community has gotten. What is a shame is that they've had to be, and I talk a lot about this when people are just like, wow, there's so many women all of a sudden interested in Formula One. And I push back on this. I'm just like, I think the women have actually, a big cohort of these women have actually always been interested in Formula One. They just weren't voicing their opinions or they weren't speaking up. And there's a myriad of reasons for that. But I love that the constraints of this sport, i.e. for women, for example, and I'll speak for myself, I knew when I started my TikTok account that it would be easier for me to talk facts and history than it would be my own personal opinions. Mostly because I realized that you can't really disagree with facts. You can disagree with me, but you can't, if I'm telling you that this is factually accurate, this is a thing that happened. And so that is what I spent a lot of my time in the first year or two of just answering people's questions. And then I realized people wanted my opinions on things as well. But it forced me to get really specific and to get really accurate information and to make sure that what I was sharing was both accurate, was true, was up to date, and was insightful and interesting in a way. So it definitely pushed me of just like, I'm going to need conversations with the engineers, with the mechanics. I need access from the teams. I need information that no one else has. I need to tell stories that don't exist. And it kept pushing me to do and be better. And I'm grateful for that. But the flip side of that is I didn't have a chance, or I don't think it was possible for me to approach it any other way, because I'm a woman on the internet, and women on the internet get judged very, very harshly, especially if you don't look a certain way. And people get confused by that. And I often joke that, if you don't like what I have to say, not everything on the internet is built for you and created for you in mind, and you can just scroll past it. So I get excited by that because I have learned so much from so many fans. And again, as I go back to, I treat Formula One as like my my entry point to talk about all of these interesting things. It's been fascinating over the last couple of years, realizing I follow a lot of Black content creators and Black female content creators, and I realized, wait, hold on a minute. Young Black women have been creating culture and have been at the cusp of creating big cultural moments for decades. And yet they're not celebrated. And yet it's the white man that takes their ideas and then it's taken seriously. And I was like, how did F1 teach me about that? And it truly did. It was speaking with all of these young content creators who were talking about the fashion in the industry and the juxtaposition of pop culture and Formula One. And they were talking to me and saying, but this has been the same in the music space. This has been the same in the entertainment space. It's always the same thing. We are here. We create these cultural moments. We create this cultural relevancy. And no one gives us credit, and it got me really angry. And so that's another example of just like that diversity in the sport just gets me so excited. I'm excited by the Americanization of the sport, because I think that as a very European sport, it has a lot to learn from America and American entertainment. And I think America has a lot to learn about how, you know, Formula One approaches certain things. One of my favorite things about Formula One is just this clash of culture and languages, and inside the paddock everyone's second language is English, and everything gets lost in translation and things get misunderstood, and people think that one driver is angry with another, and you're like, that's just the way a German person speaks, or that's just where a Spanish person speaks, and we're
especially Max.
Like, and that was always my thing. You're so right. I was like, I've lived in Belgium my whole life. I have a lot of Dutch friends. When they speak, you think they could be angry, and they're not. It's just that they're just straight to the point, direct. Whereas the French, and you see it there's a thing that like, I'm going to botch this, but someone did an analysis of how many words on average are in a sentence in English, Dutch, German, and French. And in French, it's like 2x times the amount of words, because the French are very proper, and there's an introduction to the sentence and they close out the sentence. Whereas the Brits or the Germans just go straight to the point. There's no oohing and ahhing. What do you want from me? What do you need? Tell me. Be succinct. French is the least succinct language. And my English professors always laugh. They're like, you're writing in English, but you're writing as if this was French. I don't need all of these words. Like there's a third of these words that are not helpful. I was like, oh, okay. But that's just not how I was taught to write French, because I went for a French education system. You're so right, Danica. It's so true. Like, yeah,
I always see like people are always complaining about Max and the way he just says things straight to the point, while, for example, Lewis or Lando or George or Carlos or Fernando or any other driver talks around it more.
yeah.
And Max, and like coming from the literal area where he grew up, it's just, I've always been like, but that's just Dutch. That's just the way it is. You see it with Max, you see it with Robin Freins, you see it with Richard Verschoor, you see it with Rinus
Nick de
VK.
Vries. Yeah,
Nick de
he's a bit more
Vries.
shy, but it's the same.
Although Nick has a little bit of the English part of talking a little bit around it. Although I feel like that's partially the Mercedes media training, Mercedes and McLaren. But like, especially with like a lot of other drivers, they're straight to the point. They just say it as it is, and there's no discussion needed to understand what they're saying.
And for what it's worth, like to eat, you know, it drives me, the passive aggressiveness of a Charles Leclerc or other French drivers drives me insane. Like, they are mad. I'm like, please just be mad. Don't be passive aggressive. Like, it's just so but again, I think that it's a weird one, but like the fact that we're talking linguistics and different cultures and different languages and different, like, this is what I love about the sport. I think it's just so cool. And I think if we're willing to pay attention and listen, there's so much that we can learn from that, of just like, oh, you know, where else do you get? I used to work in the European institutions where we always joke that everyone's first language was bad English, and you go, okay, who cares? Like, I'd be sat next to experts who speak 6 languages fluently. I'm like, okay, moved away from Brussels, moved to London, and people were like, I don't know what that, you said that word very bizarrely or in a funny way. Like, I don't understand the full sentence. I'm like, oh, give me a bloody break. Like, you know exactly what I'm getting at. There's one word in the sentence that I said, maybe not in the same way that you're used to hearing it, and all of a sudden you can't understand me. Stop it. So again, I think that's one of the reasons why I love the sport, because you learn to appreciate different languages and different cultures. And it's far from perfect. I still think F1 is a very stale, pale, male sport, and there's a lot of changes that need to happen. But if you take away that, it is cool to hear those different languages. Even that discussion, what was it, 3 years ago? I think it was a conversation between Will Buxton and Charles Leclerc, and he was like, how do you pronounce your name? I've heard you say Charles Leclerc, I've heard you say Charles Leclerc, you just realize, the guy adapts to whatever language you're talking to him in. Like,
I don't actually, I do the same with Max. It's Max, but if I'm speaking, I will say Max.
Yes.
Which is quite funny.
Yeah, you adapt. Like I've very slowly started sometimes saying Charles, or even Grand Prix, I'll say it somewhat with an English, because I'm starting to say it more and more in English. But until recently, these were words I would only ever say in French.
Yeah, there's certain driver names that I refuse to say in English. I will try as much as possible to say Nick de Vries instead of Nick de Vries, especially to avoid the confusion between Nick de Vries and Nick Cassidy.
There you go. Yeah. Yes, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Because that's been an issue so much in Formula E while they were both driving in it, and I cannot wait to see it happening again this year.
Because he is. Which team has he joined? The Vries? Mahindra. There you go. Yeah. Nice.
Together with Edo Mortara, which was
the
move of the season, basically.
Yeah.
But it was insane. But it's so interesting always. So
that was a long-winded answer to what are you excited by about the sport. Those were some of my answers.
There's so much. There's so much to be excited about, and then you start talking about one thing and you'll roll into another thing. So
100%.
what does a race weekend usually look like for you?
Oh, wow, that's a brilliant question. Here's the beauty of what I do that I think is maybe unique to other people who have a very specific job as a commentator or a social media person on a team. I get to craft whatever my race weekend looks like. So I'll share first like the breadth of things that I can do, and then I can give an example of what a race weekend can look like. It first of all depends if I'm going to be on site or not. If I'm on site, it's either I'm embedding myself with a team where I want to do together with them just lots and lots of content. And the beauty there, I avoid doing like what I call pay to play, which means a team pays you or a sponsor pays you or a promoter pays you a certain amount of money and they expect content in return. I avoid that because I'm not a billboard for the team. I'm not a spokesperson for the team. I don't want to be, in French you would call it a porte-parole, which is just like you say what the team needs you to say. Instead, I prefer getting paid for my time on site, and then I can go off and create incredible content. And it also means that the content remains authentic to who I am, and I do the content that I believe and I know my audience is interested in. There can also be times, again, whether I'm on site or not, where I'm commentating or I'm doing the post-race show or the pre-race show with someone like ESPN. I've done post-race shows with Sky Sports and their podcast. So there's a couple of elements there that come into play. But the biggest thing that makes my weekend look drastically different is if I'm on site or not. If I'm on site, it's generally very similar to what we've just been talking about. You fly out on the Monday or the Tuesday, you're ready to work on the Wednesday, Thursday, you're generally doing a lot of BTS footage, you're doing a lot of meetings, you're doing a lot of the media stuff. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're embedded with the team or the sponsors. I joked that for the Austin GP, which was a very unique experience for me, I had sent in preparation for this over 300 emails in preparation for that weekend because of the different types of sponsors and people I was working with. So I, you know, on the first day I worked with Aston Martin and we did the fan engagement and the live on TikTok, which was a lot of fun. I worked with Mission 44 and F1 Academy to do a conversation with Susie Wolf and Stephanie Travers, both exceptional women. Then I ended up doing a panel conversation with motorsport.com in the evening. Then I was embedded the next day and worked very closely for the following 2 days with Salesforce and McLaren, doing a lot of content and thinking through ideas and learning a lot on site. And then on the Sunday, I was embedded and working with more as a fan, but with Red Bull. And so all of that is just like a variety of different projects, which I love. It's not for everyone. Some people I think would rather stick with one team and do one thing and have the focus be the same. I love the diversity of what it can afford me. And then you travel back on the following Monday or Tuesday and you start all over again. And when you're on site, I feel like I never know what's happening on track. Like truly, it's almost impossible. And I think that's the weird paradox of this sport is the more you are on site and the closer you are to the action, the less I think you actually understand about what the hell is happening on site, because you can't see the screens or you can't hear the commentators or you don't understand the commentators. It's much more calm and relaxed when I'm at home, and it's much more geared towards evergreen content. I used to do a lot of Twitch streams. I've stopped those because I love them. It's weird, but I love them so much and they took so much of my time that I just wanted to spend 6 hours online talking with people. And I was just like, I need to find another way. So it very much depends. And if I'm not on site, it's easier for me to do the post-race shows and the post-podcast shows, etc., with people. But I find I have a better understanding of what actually happened on track, and I can actually enjoy the race when I'm remote. And I also realize the extreme and incredible privilege I have when I am on site. I get to experience everything else. But truly, I think what people don't understand is it's extremely long days. You don't want to miss anything. You're gonna miss everything because you can only be in one place at one time. There's a lot of opportunities and you have to seize them all, but you also have to be very calm and gentle with yourself that you can't do it all. There's a lot of parties and events, which I generally mostly go back to my hotel room and then watch the race. And you kind of feel really stupid of just like, I was at the track and here I am in my hotel room watching the race again with a 5-hour delay. Makes no sense. So that's the craziness of what a race weekend can look like.
I can definitely see like how difficult it can be to watch the race when you're actually on track. Because like I remember being in Zandvoort on the Friday this year, and during free practice 2, I think, we were in line to meet Richard Verschoor. Because I had ordered something from his shop, and he was doing it during free practice, so only really the people who really wanted to would show up, and there wouldn't be a line incredibly long. And I remember us watching it like on the screen at the Knuff stand. And then we saw the crash of Piastri and then almost immediately Daniel, and we were like, holy guacamole. Like we were so confused what had happened, and we just didn't know. Same with André Lotterer in Formula E in Monaco this year. Like we were like almost opposite of where it happened, but because there was like some buildings in front of it, we couldn't see anything and the cameras didn't show it, so we were so confused like what actually had happened. And it was like just past the pit lane entrance, which was crazy.
There's an element of what you can see where you're sat, just pure dumb luck of you at the right place at the right time where something happens. And I also think if you're at a race weekend and you're working and embedded with a team, you also have, or a sponsor, you have the view of what they are focused on. And so you miss everything else. And F1, someone told me this the other day, and I thought it was so spectacular when I was trying to wrap my head, and we mentioned this, like being an F1 fan is exhausting. And I was like, but why is it so exhausting? And yes, there's the number of races, but I was like, there's something else to it. And this Guy explained it so incredible, and I'm going to probably botch it, but I'm going to definitely steal his analogy because it was so good. He was like, look, if I'm a fan of Manchester United in football, I'm a fan of Manchester United. I am not going to follow all the transfers and all the rumors and all the updates of every other football club. I don't care, or any other footballer. I am focused on my team and my team alone. I don't think most Formula One fans look at the sport that way. I think most Formula One fans, even if you've got a favorite driver or a couple of favorite drivers or a couple of favorite teams, you look at the sport as a whole. So whatever's happening, even if, if you're a diehard McLaren fan, you're paying attention to what's happening with Ferrari and what's happening with Mercedes and their drivers. And you're also focused on what's happening at the FIA level and the Formula One level and Liberty Media level. And so I don't know if that's true in other sports, but I definitely, when he was comparing football, I was like, oh, that's why it's also so exhausting. And I think when I'm embedded with Aston Martin or McLaren, I am definitely looking at the whole race through the lens of that one team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also experiencing the highs and lows of that one team when you miss everything else that's happening on track. Most of the time, you're also just not watching the race. You're watching what the mechanics are doing, or you're watching what the team is doing. And you're like, oh, just missed absolutely everything that happened on track. 2 years ago, I managed to be at the Austin GP. I refused to be spoiled, and I managed to be there working for more or less the whole weekend and not be spoiled on most of the race results. And I was just like, nope, I want to enjoy the race when I can, but you don't get to when you're in person, not all the time, not when you're working anyway.
Yeah, that's what I've also heard from like a couple of other people who we've had on the podcast. Like, someone we've had like as one of the first guests was Teresa, who
Yeah.
has done media in Formula E and DTM. And like, I know she was in the GT World Cup. She was invited to work with Total Energies, and like from what I've seen from her TikTok stories and Instagram stories about it, was that she actually barely saw the race. Like occasionally she got a glimpse of the cars going past, but because she was with the fuel supplier, she was busy with a lot of other things while still being able to create some content. It was a lot more difficult for her compared to what she usually does. So it was just, I always find these kind of things very interesting. Same with Mona, who we recorded, who I recorded with a couple of weeks ago that we still need to edit. But yeah, it was very interesting to see and hear the different perspectives of people who work in different parts of the industry, especially because some people do media, some people do marketing, some people do content creation. Then you have the engineers, you have everyone in different fields and experiencing it in different ways. And it's just so interesting.
I generally think, apart from the F1 commentators like Brundle and Crofty, who are actually watching it like everyone else, they're watching it, what's happening on a screen, and they have all of that additional information. It's, again, I think it's an interesting paradox of if you are a giant F1 fan, working in this industry is probably not what you want to be doing, because you don't actually get to enjoy the sport and the races and see it all and consume it all like a fan is able to be. But at the same time, if you are an incredible fan of this sport, I know that feeling of, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm standing in a garage. I can't believe I'm so close to an F1 car. I can't believe I'm seeing my idols or the drivers or the athletes that I look up to. And it's like a weird tension of, you want to be as close to the action and this space as possible. But at the same time, if you work there, you are head down and working, and you have no idea what's happening around you. I'm very grateful to have spent this time in the paddock and in the garages with the team. And I am in awe of what these teams sometimes are able to pull off. And it feels like everyone is doing 2-3 full-time jobs nonstop. It's crazy. Impressive.
Yeah, I'm always more impressed with what the teams have done than what the drivers have pulled off, especially this weekend with Alpine. Like,
tell me more. What were you impressed with Alpine this past weekend and what they pulled off?
Like, Alpine is not necessarily known as a team who has like everything on the rails.
Yeah.
Especially after the crash of Ocon, the way that they still got the car like fully working and fully able to drive for the sprint, was incredible to see. And then also seeing both of the drivers end up in the points. Yes, there were 6 DNFs, but like still, or 5 DNFs, but still there was an incredible effort from the team. Also with Pierre having a new power unit which was already in the pool. Seeing him just constantly overtake the Mercedeses, it would not be possible if he wasn't going to pit the moment that he did, and if the pit stop didn't go as well as it did. Like, it's just incredible to see, like, the
What a feat.
effort of the team, which then influences the effort of the driver, which then influences the result, and just the result for the entire team is just incredible to see. Same with Aston Martin.
It was interesting. My husband just saw one of the crashes and he was like, I'm sorry, are they expected to rebuild that car? And I was like, oh, yep, they've already started. And it is, you do have that appreciation of the car is an absolute total mess. And, you know, not all the time when it's really bad, obviously they don't try and, you know, they're trying to, feels like sometimes it's looking at a porcelain cup that's like been shattered into 1,000 pieces and you're like, should we glue this up or should we take a new one? But yeah, it was just fascinating. My husband, who doesn't really care about Formula One, was just like, wait, I'm sorry, are they expected now to go and rebuild this thing? I was like, wow.
Yeah. Same as in Rome. Like that big crash. I was impressed the day after that everybody was starting. I was like,
I was there when it happened. I didn't even see it happening. Like, we were waiting like somewhere like in the shade because it was so incredibly hot, and we were just watching from there instead of in our actually seating area, because we had also accumulated a group of other fans who we were sitting together with, and like we saw and like heard everything that from the crash that happened. And then the day after, we went to the pit lane walk again, and all of the cars were there, and we were like, oh my gosh, how did they do it? Especially with the amount of spare parts that Formula E has. Like, we were in a pit lane walk, and Antonio Felix da Costa was complaining about the fact that Jake Hughes had already gotten his their spare Porsche, because like their spare Porsche parts, because Jake had a crash, which was just so funny to see, because it's just a random draw. Like, you crash your car, let's pick a car, and oh, it's the Porsche, so your team is gonna rebuild the car around that Porsche chassis or whatever it was. And it's just so interesting to see then like the amount of cars that were in the pileup, and then the fact that the next day all of the cars are driving again. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's a nice again, it's not something that I think is shown enough, but maybe they also don't want to show that side of the sport a bit too much. But that appreciate that, to your point, like having that appreciation for what the drivers are able to do is pretty insane.
Yeah, not necessarily just drivers, but especially
the
teams.
The teams. Yeah, forget the drive. Yeah, forget the drivers. All they're being asked to do is just sit
they just have to drive in weirdly shaped
circles. They just need to
circles.
show up to work. Yeah, who are we kidding?
Yeah. They just drive in weirdly shaped circles, and yeah, occasionally there's some rain. In F1, there's been a lot of rain this year, but like occasionally there's some rain, so it gets a little bit more tricky. But like, besides
they have it easy. They've got the easy bit of the job. Who are we kidding?
Compared to some of the other who work in
and look,
yes,
that's the beauty, is the mechanics and the engineers probably think the same thing. They're like, thank God it's not me driving this thing. Like, I can build it. You need to do your part, which again, like, is one of the things I love about Formula One, is it truly is a team sport. Like, no matter what way you look at it, this is a team sport.
Yeah, many people always say like, oh yeah, it's just a driver. It's just a driver who's doing well, or and then the other people are saying, oh, it's just a car, but it's not. Look at what Max Verstappen is doing in that Red Bull compared to what Checo has been doing the past couple of races.
And there's an element here that I think is really, for lack of a better word, sad. It's just, it truly is right driver, right teammate, right car build, right team, right race engineer, and it's the whole thing working together in perfect synchrony. Like there's just, and sometimes it takes time. If you listen to the onboard conversations between, for example, Max Verstappen and his race engineer over the years, like you can see how comfortable they've become. You can see the trust that's been built over time. You can see there's very much a mutual respect. That wasn't the case 5 years ago, not because the respect wasn't there, is they were figuring each other out and they never worked with each other. But it breaks my heart to think that they are probably a fair number of drivers who are spectacular, but right now they're at the same time as a Max Verstappen and there's no chance in hell. And you see that a lot in tennis as well, like just incredible talent. But there's, a Federer, or there's another, there's a Serena Williams there, and you have no chance in hell. No matter how good you are, there is someone who's just exceptional, like a generational talent that's there. And we saw the same thing with Sir Lewis Hamilton when he was on top. But on top of that as well, it is just that car is made to perfection for his driving style, and he just all of those pieces just are perfect. So I'm with you. And look, I remember asking Seb Vettel at some point, was it 2021? I asked Seb Vettel, what is the hardest to get used to? Is it harder to get used to the car? Is it harder to get used to a new teammate? Is it harder to get used to a new race engineer? And he's like, it's all. Even if you find it easy to get used to the car, those two other elements are still just as important, and you've got to figure them out, because if you don't have that figured out, then what's the point? Great, you've got a phenomenal car, but it's not working with the teammate, and it's not working with your race engineer, and these other components are not coming into play. So there's an element there of just, you can't prep for that. You can't prep for Red Bull having built that car that fits that driver to perfection. That driver's at the top of his career, and that's what makes that second seat in Red Bull so hard. Is anyone who joins Formula One, any driver on that grid right now has to believe that they can be world champion, or else they wouldn't be driving in Formula One. Every single driver sits there and thinks, I am here because I believe I can be a world champion. Except if you take that oh, what has he said? He doesn't believe that?
No, his bigger dream is opening a restaurant.
He's just like this. Champion. He's like, this is just, this is what I do until I figure out my restaurant. I love that man. But that's what's crazy with the Red Bull seat is, if you're going to take that seat, you have to be okay with the fact that you probably won't be a world champion because you're racing against Max Verstappen. And I think that's just such a fascinating, horrific mind fuck, excuse my language, to have to work through. Is you're in Formula One because you believe that you can be a world champion, but wait, if you take that seat, that dream has to be put aside because there's no chance you're becoming a world champion if you're driving alongside Max Verstappen. Not right now anyway.
Yeah, and especially like with the way that Max was raised, of course, like he knows the ins and outs of cars. Like he knows exactly what he would want to change in a setup and stuff like that. Whereas like a lot of other drivers don't have that as much, or if they step into the Red Bull, their input isn't valued as much in a way. Like that's the reason that Daniel left to go to Renault, to McLaren, and now he's back at AlphaTauri. There's a reason why Pierre didn't work out, why Alex Albon didn't work out. It's all because of how well Max knows cars and like knows the different types of setups he would want.
And for what it's worth, Daniel is a perfect example of someone where the timing's just been wrong. He didn't stay long enough at Renault. He didn't stay long enough at McLaren. And I'm not saying that you should wait it out, but all of those, that adaptation to the car takes time. And the thing that, again, I think most people forget is when you're deciding to leave a team, those decisions are made months in advance. If city season is coming and your contract is up in July, August, or September, you've made the decision in March or April that you're leaving that team. Like that decision has been made, and then you stick with it and run with it, and contract negotiations are happening in the back. So giving yourself a year or just over a year or just under a year to adapt to a team is just not enough. But the timing piece is so interesting how it plays. And I just think for someone like Daniel, it's like, God, the timing every time has just been wrong for you.
Yeah, especially like with the new regulations, he was the one that was driving better than Sebastian. Like, and then Max gets put into the car in 2016, and he just, in Dutch we say rijdt hem om de oren, like he drives him around the ears.
Yeah, circles. You drive. Yeah, you drive. Yeah,
He's
he drives
driving,
circles around. He drives
yeah,
circles around everyone else. Yeah, that's the
like
expression.
it's insane to just see like how it develops, and especially like the way that Max was put into the team. First race in the team, or like one of the first races in the team, he wins. Yes, the Mercedeses took each other out, and he had a two-stopper, whereas Daniel had a three-stopper, and Kimi had a two-stopper, I think, and Seb had a three-stopper as well. But he still drove that race. Later in Brazil, he kept it out of the wall in the tricky conditions after a 360 spin, whereas Rosberg was struggling a lot more with the car, which is a more experienced driver and stuff like that. Like it's insane, like how well he adapted to the car in such a short time, even with like his experience in the past, and the fact that he completely skipped GP2 back at the time. Insane.
Yeah, this is one of the things that surprises me when people are like, the sport's so boring. Max wins everything. I'm like, oh, we're witnessing from the cusp one of the greatest talents in this sport. Just like I wish I could, my first race in Formula One that I attended in person that I will always like tie to, that was my first experience of Formula One, was 1991 Spa-Francorchamps, which was coincidentally the first time that Michael Schumacher sat in the car. He was actually filling in for his for the other teammate, the driver who was actually imprisoned. It's a weird story, but he got into a fight with someone and it got very physical and got imprisoned and had to serve time in jail. And so Michael Schumacher jumped into the seat. And I it's one of those that I'm just like, God, I wish I was older to really remember the first time that Michael Schumacher got in a car and showed the world what he is capable of doing. And I'm like, we get to do exactly that right now. I get to do exactly that right now with a Max Verstappen and really appreciate the talent. So yeah, when people say, oh, the sport's so boring, I'm like, I don't understand this, because we're able to witness absolute greatness. Similar this year in tennis with Coco Gauff and Ben Shelton. I'm just like, we're witnessing people at the cusp of what they are physically capable of doing, and I just find that incredibly exciting. And if that's not for you, then that's totally fine. But I do feel like there's something worth witnessing right now in the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
I had the same with the Iron Dames with their win. I was like, non-motorsport people will not get why this win is so important and why I cried. Because it's, as F1 Academy is the same, like it needs to be physical for young girls. It needs to be physical, like they need to see that it's possible, and non-motorsport people will not understand that.
But also male motorsport people don't
Oh
fully
yes, but
understand it. Like not just non-motorsport people, also male motorsport people a lot. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But yeah, it's very interesting always to see like how incredible it is, like what is happening now. Like there's always something happening, but to see like to witness like Max Verstappen growing throughout the years, like he's been driving in the sport for like 8 years now, and he's been very impressive. There's a reason why Niki Lauda back in 2016 in Spain said like he's gonna do great things or something like that. Like, and now we actually get to see it. He's breaking records left, right, and center. It's insane.
Indeed, he is.
Got another question for you.
Yeah.
So it's a question that I recently asked Juan Manuel Correa, and I feel like it's also a question that I think you might have a very interesting answer
Ooh, okay.
for. What is the best advice you have ever given or gotten regarding motorsport and fulfilling a place in it?
Best advice I have given and gotten. Best advice I have gotten had nothing to do with motorsports and was from my dad. And it's something that I still do today, which is just keep ruffling feathers. And it's one of the reasons I don't want to be inside of Formula One. I don't want to be inside that industry. I love being on the outside because I get to, and again, I also understand that I'm coming at it from the outside with probably not all the information and not all the knowledge and not all the understanding of about why certain things are done and why other things are not done. But I also get to have this like bird's eye view and go, how are we not doing better? This is not okay. I get to question things. I get to ask the hard questions because I'm not on the inside. I will never forget this. I thought this was really interesting. In Austin, when I was on this panel with motorsport.com, Otmar Safnow was a speaker, Will Buxton was a speaker as well. And Will Buxton said something which I thought was really interesting, and it's still clearly resonating with me because it's still in my head. He said, you know, we have so many different fan bases to engage and to make happy that on a good day when no one's mad, I know I've done a good presentation or I've done a good commentary show. And I was like, wow, on a good day, when I've pissed off people, I know I've done a good job because my content isn't for everyone. And so it was interesting that the success metrics for him was making sure everyone felt served and everyone was happy. My success metrics is the complete opposite. You didn't like my comment? Great. This comment was never meant for you. You can move on and go and consume someone else's content with absolute due respect. It's just like, I'm very clear on who my audience is, and I'm very clear on who I'm serving and who I'm serving first and foremost. And so that piece from Will is just so incredibly powerful to me, but it also just reminded me of what my dad always said. It's just ruffle feathers. You're not there to please everyone. You've got a very clear point of view. You are going into rooms where you are probably not expected to be in, where people don't want to listen to you. So keep doing your thing, which I absolutely love. And giving is actually that the advice that I gave, and I gave it not that long ago, which is you really don't need to be on the inside to create great value and great content. Don't wait. If you're a photographer, don't wait until you can afford to attend an F1 race. Don't wait until someone's going to somehow give you an FIA accreditations. Those things are not handed out. And so be okay with working out in the public and failing out in the public, but that means that people get to see your work, people get to comment on your work, people get to tell you what resonates, what doesn't. You get to take that feedback on board. You get to see what works, what doesn't, what people like. And that's if you're a photographer, but that's true if you're a writer or a commentator. Too many people have asked me or have said, if only people could see what I'm capable of. I'm like, what's stopping you? Because again, there's no excuses in my opinion today. The bar, as we started this conversation, is so low for anyone to create a YouTube channel, to have their own show, to build their own show, to host their own audience, to build, like there's very little limitation. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. The algorithms are still very sexist. They're very biased. Being a woman on the internet is hard. Being a woman in a sport like Formula One is incredibly hard. Like none of it is going to be easy. But there's no excuses, and the software and the tools available to us just means that we're capable of doing it. That also means there's a lot of noise, which also means you have to be very opinionated and you have to keep at it. But I keep hearing people say things like, how should I get an FIA accreditation? My first question is, no one's going to give it to you right now, because there are people with a lot longer CVs than you, with much more experience, where they've got a portfolio where they can prove what they've done. But then my second question, which is obviously a little less harsh, is, why do you need it? Why do you think you need this? There's a point at which you might, but the content, I'd already written 2 versions of my F1 beginner's guide. I'd already done 400 or so videos on TikTok before, I started working with teams. And it meant that the conversation with the teams I worked with was incredibly easy, because I didn't have to convince them. They're just like, we've seen your TikToks, we know your body of work, we know what we can expect from you. There's a reason we're coming and talking with you and not someone else, because we want to work with you. We want your tone of voice, we want your content, we want your POV. Are you down? Easiest deal I have ever closed in my life. If I didn't have that body of work, I would have had to convince them, and the conversations would have taken longer. So just like, don't, the best advice is, I wish I had started all of this 10 years ago, and that's always so much easier said than done. But that's the best advice I ever got. And that's the best advice I think I can give to anyone, is No one's going to give you access. You don't need the access. Actually, the lack of access will make it that you get even more creative. And probably you'll create content of value. And it also, weeds out the people who want the access just to have the access, and the people who want the access to create content. And sometimes you don't need the access to create the type of content you want to create. Nothing should get in your way and stop you.
Yeah, that's great advice.
That's great advice. I
Yeah.
feel like that's also like in some way affects like what we do with the podcast and with the entire account as well. Like that's what we've been looking at, like in that way. Like we're doing it because we want to,
Yes.
not because we want the accreditation or something else. Like it's fun, yeah. I love all of the interactions I've had with drivers in the pit lane walks or with teams and stuff like that. But I'm doing it because I have a love for it and I have my interest and I want to share my interest, not because I want to be invited by the teams or be behind the scenes.
And the reality is there's room for all types of content. So for example, there's maybe people, and we're probably in the same bucket of just like, you have a love for the type of content that you're putting out there. And regardless if you're paid, not paid, you'd still do it. Then there's people, I think, who got really clever and creative, who are just like, I want to be a commentator in this sport. So I'm going to use these channels to showcase what I'm capable of. And this is very much like I'm building my CV and my portfolio so that when I do apply, or maybe I don't need to apply and they'll just find me, but they'll find me because of all of this stuff that I've done. Which is, I say to anyone who wants to become a social media manager, if you want to become a social media social media manager on a team, the easiest application you could do is showcase all of the work you've already done beforehand. Same if you want to become a designer, whatever it is. There's different ways of approaching it. You can just be a content creator because you love creating content, and there's no goal, there's no plan, there's no next step. You're just doing it to build a community, and you're doing it because it's something that you want to see. And then that's great. And then there's nothing wrong with also being like, I'm going to be really smart and creative here, and I'm going to build it with a vision and with an idea and a strategy in mind of where this is going to take me. Neither is wrong, neither is better than the other. They're just two different approaches, and I'm sure there's a myriad of other approaches, and both are phenomenal.
I feel like sometimes they also overlap with like some certain people. Like some people have started because they like doing it, and then like while they were doing it, they're like, oh, maybe I can get further with this. Maybe I can invite teams. Maybe I can invite these people. I can invite drivers, but engineers, physios, anything, like to get the ball rolling, to get people interested, but also to share their point of view and stuff like that, like to really engage the community, but also being creative and having like in a certain way a goal to work to, while not having a clear goal, just like content creation being the goal, but also sharing the stories being a goal.
I see
feel
that.
like feel like that's with especially like a bunch of female creators. I feel like that's partially what you see a lot nowadays.
100%. Like we're all, and again, I think everyone is creating the sub community that they wish they had, and the sub community of friends that they want to engage with and interact with, which means there are so many options for people today of communities they want to join. But it also means that maybe you're more of a Discord person, or maybe you're more of a Twitch streamer, or you want to actually consume on YouTube, or you want to chat on TikTok and consume. There's loads of opportunities to engage and to find what actually works for you, which I think is pretty cool, and also very complicated for a lot of the teams where they're just like, where should we be spending our time and energy and focus? Like we need to be on all of these platforms at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like that especially as well for teams, of course, it's getting difficult. Like they have to expand their team to be able to really communicate with everyone.
Yeah. They have to be everywhere all times. They have to be everything to everyone and be in on all places at all times, which is a lot. Which is why the community managers on these teams are doing like 20 different jobs, and it's just fascinating to me. And at the same time, they have to be actual community managers, where they're looking at the content and the comment section and taking care of the people online. And there's a lot happening.
Yeah. So to finish it off, first of all,
Okay.
I'm very excited to see that your merch line, your new merch collection is coming out very soon. And second of all, so we've talked about a few different series, but what is the favorite series for you to follow, and what do you always see yourself looking for when watching any type of motorsport?
Ooh. I'm very, very in love with Formula E, and it's interesting because I love for Formula E, even though it's weird because the racing is probably quote unquote more exciting. There's a lot more happening in Formula E, and you look at the number of overtakes that you have in a Formula E race compared to a Formula One race, really makes Formula One race look bland. Even though I believe it's absolutely not, but you can't just look at the two and compare the numbers and go, oh my God. But the thing that gets me even more excited about Formula E is this the future of motor racing, the technology, the innovation? Like there's so much there. And I also think, quite frankly, on a very aesthetical level, the cars just look freaking cool. Like the Formula E cars just look so, so good. Weirdly, I'm actually silently really in love with MotoGP and want to do more with MotoGP because I cannot comprehend what these drivers do. My brain just has a really hard time comprehending just anything about this sport, even, you know, to the fact that it's just two wheels and that they seem to just sit on a two-wheel thing and be like, this is fine, this is easy. The speeds at which they go, the fact that sometimes they're, you know, parallel to the ground is just insane to me. What was the second part of that question, and what
So,
keeps me coming back? Excited.
so what do you always see yourself looking for when watching any motorsport?
I'm one of those very weird people who I just get fascinated by the business of the sport and the sponsors. And look, that was my entry point into Formula One right back in the day, was coming in through like I came in at a time where big tobacco was still spending a lot of money in this sport, and big tobacco was being banned, and the European institutions came out with their directive, anti-tobacco directive. And I won't bore people with that, but I am fascinated about the business model of this sport, even more so than the racing, strangely. And so how the sponsors are changing from one race to another when they're, you know, selling products that are actually illegal in certain markets, and they find very clever ways of changing the logos on the cars and the types of sponsors that this sport attracts. The fact that last year 9 out of 10 sponsors were crypto sponsors is just fascinating to me. The fact that we've banned tobacco advertising, and yet we still have a lot of adjacent tobacco advertisers in the sport. The fact that these athletes and drivers are asked to bring so much money into the sport as well, and be a name and a face and a recognizable face in this sport is just fascinating to me. And then the ever-ending question of why would you ever want to sponsor in Formula One? What do you get out of it? What does the return on investment look like? And a fun anecdote that I will share here was talking with the CMO at Aston Martin about logo placements and how they've evolved over time. And back in the day, you would want your logo on the side of the car, because if you're looking at it through a very linear TV perspective, you see the cars go by, and that's obviously side of the car is the biggest placement, the biggest space. And he was like, yes, but think about over time, with the rise of social media and celebrities and influencers coming to the garage, the most iconic shot that they have is when they're picking up their phone and they're in selfie mode with the car in the back, which means that if the logos are on the nose of the car, you actually get a lot more social media exposure. And if your logo's on the side of the car, you barely ever get that social media exposure. And my brain just exploded of just like, wow, I wish I was in those meetings to have those conversations with sponsors of like, where do you want your logo, and who's your audience? Is your audience more going to watch on linear TV? Then your logo should probably be on the side. If your audience is more interested in social media, and like all of that. And then, you know, in the same vein, we talked about how the mechanics and the engineers are like, can less logos, scrap the paint, scrap the colors. And obviously the marketing team is like, more logos, more colors popping here. And they're like, no. And these are just the things about the sport that I love. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, the business side of Formula One, as you can tell, really excites me.
I mean, I like that it's different perspective, because I always see myself like looking at the health perspective, like
Yeah.
seeing how the drivers get out of the car and all of that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting for me to see like someone who is excited by the business or someone who is excited by the engineering and all of the different parts that everyone is excited by.
And if yours is health, Jamie, what's your angle in the sport? Like, what do you get most excited by?
More media. I don't know why. It's just interesting how teams just figuring out everything at once. Like, they are on Instagram, they are on TikTok. I mean, Aston Martin has a fantastic content team. I like Jimmy. He's the master of social media at this point.
Yeah. And very humble. He will be the first one to tell you, it's not just me, there's a giant team behind me. He doesn't have a giant team behind him, but there's absolutely a team behind him that helped come up with all the creative ideas. And watching him, by the way, explain to Fernando Alonso what he needs him to do is the best, where you're just like, you can see Fernando go, so I said that again, you need me to do what exactly? And they'll do it. Like, he's so open to it, which is honestly one of the best decisions I think Fernando has ever done after joining Aston Martin. It's just being like, okay, I'm going to embrace social media. I just have to.
But with his TikTok, yes.
Exactly. And with Jimmy, just like Jimmy's help, but also just seeing Jimmy explain TikTok trends to him. I have the same with Lizzie McIntosh. When I look at her, I'm just like, I want to be on the fly on the wall when you're explaining to a lotterer or anyone in Formula One, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to change outfits. You're going to come in. You're going to go like, go what? No. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I just need the BTS of this. I need you. Yeah. I need Esteban's Ocon or Pierre Gassi's face when you're explaining a TikTok trend and what you're going to ask them to do. Like, I need that because I just think it takes a unique kind of human being to be able to do that and to build that trust with the driver and to know that you're going to execute on it to perfection and everyone's going to have fun and we're all going to feel a little stupid, but it's going to be worth it. Like, it takes a special bond and it takes a special type of person to be able to do that and pull that off, which he does every single time, which Jimmy does every single time. So yeah, Jamie, I can get that comms side of it is very interesting.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to ask. I don't know if Jamie has any more pointers.
I love it. We've exhausted your box of questions. I'm excited by that.
I've got like a few small questions, but I'm like, I can also ask them in any other way. And they're not that interesting for the other people because it's very me focused and like my interest focused, but I don't think that
I get that
everyone likes that. But yeah,
that's a hard one, by the way. It's a hard one. I'm just like, I have this every time I sit with the drivers or teams. I'm just like, Toni, ask a question that other people will want to know, not just your own interests.
Yeah, I always feel like that's a little difficult, but yeah, I try my best. So
amazing.
First of all, I want to thank you a lot for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me.
It was a very interesting and very explanatory conversation.
I'll take that. I will take that.
And it definitely gave me insights in your views on especially F1, but also some other motorsport series. I want to lead all of the listeners to our social medias to in our link tree to check out as well, to see more of us, but also to be able to ask questions, see results, and anything else regarding motorsport, and possibly us attending races again upcoming season. And I want to thank everyone for listening just in the first place. And I will see you all next week with another lovely guest and another lovely and interesting episode. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
You want me to take you back? You want me to take you back? You want me to take you back?